you. All right. So, let's officially start. Good morning, everyone. I should just, these are the goggles that the teaching students are going to be wearing to interact with the class. So actually, I think Scott was going to try and get it ready so it was going to work, but I'm not sure if it is ready to go. But we're just going to do our lesson thing. Okay. So, very good morning, everyone. Welcome to Psych. Screen's down. Thanks, Georgina. So, today we are going to really be following on from what we did last lesson, and then we're going to sort of be applying our understanding of that. So, the topic for today's lesson is judging and perceiving others. So, we're going to start looking at stereotypes, prejudice and discrimination. And they're terms I'm sure you'll have a little bit of an idea about. So we'll be looking for lots of your own examples and ideas from your own experiences to add to what we're going to learn. But just to touch base with what we did last lesson or last week, we learned about the tri-component model of attitudes, or the ABC. So, what does the A of the tri-component model stand for? Let's go. Affective, that's exactly right. And what does affective mean?
Like our feelings.
That's right, our feelings, the feeling and emotional side of an attitude. Excellent. What about the B? Sienna. Excellent. And what does that mean? Yeah, absolutely. It's the action part. And what about the C? Sam?
Cognitive.
Yeah, that's right, cognitive. And what's another word for cognitive? Or what does cognitive mean?
Like our thinking or ideas.
Yeah, absolutely, our thinking. Mahali, would you mind just closing the door, please? There's a bit of noise out there. Okay, that's exactly right. So the ABC. So we're actually going to be applying that today again in terms of the topic that we're doing today. So our learning intentions, which are up on the side there, but are to distinguish between stereotypes, prejudice and discrimination. So they're three terms, you'll be learning about them and then being able to define each of them and give examples of each of them as well to show your understanding of them. And then for the second part of the lesson, we'll be applying our understanding of those terms to the Jane Elliott case study that we looked at yesterday for those people who were here. All right, and this is just as we would normally do. So the slides that have got the little pencil on it are for notes. So just a reminder that when you do your notes, you are to try and put the definitions into your own words, and we'll be encouraging you to give your own examples, and of course including silly or funny or helpful little sketches will also help to consolidate your understanding. And then the slides that have got this little symbol on it will be the ones where there's an action or something to do. And today's lesson actually has quite a lot of activity-based things, just short, sharp little activities. So we'll set up our notes in a few minutes, but I'm going to show you a little clip to start with. So all I need you to do for this is to watch it, and then we'll discuss it afterwards.
He's got long hair, but at work he ties it in a ponytail. Probably piercings.
I read a lot of books. I read cognitive psychology, behavioral science. I've spoken at TED Talks. Really? Wow.
You look nerdy. Like you think you're cool, but you're still a nerd. أكثر شيء مركز عليه التراث الإماراتي واللغة العربية.
And I also think he's really good at work.
Yeah, you and I feel that, yeah.
أنا وايد أحب الطبخ. يعني معظم وقتي أطبخ في المطبخ. طبعا يعني طبخ.
He's mature, like he's like cheddar cheese.
You mean bits?
تكنيك معفن.
Extreme sports athlete. I skydive and it's pretty high risk activity for sure.
Because your actions speak louder than words, right?
God, dude,
Whoa.
But I'm always surprised. It was amazing when the lights came on and you get to realize who you're actually conversing with.
استغربت أول شيء لأن أول شيء فتحت الليتات الحمراء واحد جالس جوا واحد جالس قدامي كلها تحت الزاوية.
This was my expectation of you. This is what you really are.
You guys should be swapped. I didn't expect that.
The rocker was someone who I would expect to be, a heavy metal musician.
I should have these tattoos, not you, man. قبل ببالي براسي كنت راسم صورة إنه هو حيكون عربي كثير شاذ. That's how you look.
When I saw Garrett on the wheelchair, I was completely taken back.
Hey man, come on.
أنا جد العلبة فتحتها ما مكتوب عليه شيء ما مكتوب عليه كلها.
And the minute I turned around, I saw that
الليبلز أو الشعار أو المغلف أو التصميم هو بس للعلب مش للناس.
ترى واضحة يعني المفروض ما تحكم عن واحد من السكن.
الشخص مو بلازم يعني ننتقده بشكله لكن أول شيء نتعرف عليه عقب نقدر نقول كيف الشخص.
it changes your mind, your perspective, your heart.
Boom. Okay, so what was that little clip about? Anthony.
It's like you shouldn't like judge people by like what you see, like and what like because there's like a real person behind it, and like they have feelings and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about not judging people by what we see. So were the participants in that little experiment, were they surprised when the lights came on? Yeah, so what was an example of a surprised element? When the lights came on and they didn't see what they expected to see? Sienna?
They kind of decided who fit the stereotypes that they thought that they were.
Yeah, can you think of a specific example?
Yeah, they thought the man with the tattoos would play in a heavy metal band.
Yeah, that's right, and that was not the case at all. Good. Sarah?
Like they had like different impressions of the guy in the wheelchair than expected.
Yeah, that's
They
it.
immediately like felt bad because he's different to like them, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's one of the things that we're going to look at today is how our first impressions can really build up an expectation for who somebody is or what somebody might be like, but just how accurate those are that's really one of the things that psychology can do is to try and give us an understanding of that. Sienna?
I was just going to say what Sarah said, like because of what he was able to do, they assumed that he was able-bodied.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So how often do we do that, do you think? Build up an expectation of someone before we really get to know them? All the time? Yeah. Do you think that serves its, has its advantages? Yeah, so what might be an advantage of making those sort of first impression judgments? Sam?
A lot of time, like our first impressions can tell if someone's going to be mean to us or it's going to be dangerous or something like that, or it can also tell us if someone's more on the nicer side and someone we should actually be talking to and interacting with.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a really good point, the first point that you made about like our safety. So it is like a human gut instinct, isn't it, to sort of use that really quick judgment to make sure that we're going to be okay. But then as we get to know somebody better, we often get to understand that those labels or expectations are actually quite different to what they're really like. Okay, good. What did you notice about who was it that put that little clip together? Coca-Cola. Okay. So we looked at advertising last week, didn't we? So can you think of a reason why Coke have actually used that particular scenario for an ad? Sienna?
Because it fits with their tagline for that specific time. Because they were also talking about Black Lives Matter celebrations, and so that was appealing to that kind of.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. And do you remember an example of a type of learning that could be associated with this, that Coke could be using to encourage people to feel positive about their brand? Yeah, it was a question. Good question. Do you remember we looked at different types of learning for attitudes? And there was a particular type of learning where we can associate, either positive or negative feelings. Georgina, did you?
Classical conditioning.
Yeah, that's right, classical conditioning. So where we might associate positive feelings as a result of that, because that's a bit of a warm, fuzzy type ad, isn't it? And an informative ad. So actually using that to have a positive association with Coke. Okay. So that's just those questions. Now, we are going to set up for notes now. So again, you may choose your mode of note taking if you would like some A3 paper for a mind map. So I'm going to set up a mind map up on the board as usual. So if you would like some A3 paper, you can come and collect it, or I can bring it around. Would anyone like A3? No one's going to use A3 today? Okay. Alrighty. So the topic for this is judging and perceiving others. Yes, it is. 7B, that is correct. All right. So this first little activity is to get you to think about an experience that you have had where you've met someone and had a first impression, and then once you've got to know them, you've changed that impression. And that change may be for better or not, but just wanting you to have a think about someone in particular that you've maybe misjudged when you first met them. So I'm going to give an example. When I was at uni, there was a girl who was in all of my lectures, and she'd sneak in late and she'd leave early and she'd always sit over on her own. And the rest of us in the group used to wonder about this girl because she didn't choose to interact with anyone. And we'd see her in the cafeteria and she'd be sitting on her own. So just thought she was a bit odd, or really shy, or not wanting to interact with us. And then down the track, when I did get a chance to actually get to know her, I found out that she was French. She'd only just arrived in the country, didn't have a great grasp of English, and so she was just getting used to a whole new culture and a new city. And when I actually started to get to know her, she was we're still friends. So she was really funny, she was loyal, and as she started to learn more and more English, she was feeling much more confident in being able to interact. So for me, my initial impressions of somebody who was sort of fairly cool and shy and reserved actually ended up being quite the opposite once I actually got to know her. So for me, it was about spending time with her to get to know the real her rather than what I thought. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes in your notes to draw a little sketch in the middle of a person that represents someone that you know for whom you've changed your impressions. So it doesn't need a lot of detail, just characteristics. List your initial impressions and then your after impressions. And then we'll share just a couple. Okay, 1 minute to go. Okay, if you're still finishing yours off, keep going. But would somebody like to share their initial and after impressions? Sienna, love to hear yours.
So I did my younger sister's sapphire, and because there is like an 8-year age difference, when she was born, I thought she was really annoying and really loud. And now I still think that she's really annoying and really loud, but my attitude to those characteristics changed. So now I accept that, and being annoying and loud isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Excellent, fantastic. So for you, it's been about time and experience. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for sharing that. One more. Did you want to share yours, John? Yeah. Are you happy then, Charlotte, for that to be shared?
No.
No, so when I first came here,
yeah,
obviously I had to make an assumption about some people, like how they would act and stuff. So I did about Charlotte. First came here, I thought she was like either mean or intimidating, but obviously as soon as I got to know her, she's like friendly, she's caring, all that.
Yeah. Oh,
I
Charlotte.
was about other people, but I couldn't do anything else.
Actually, John, that's a really, really good example. So because you arrived, was it this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you arrive, at the start of year 11, and everybody else knows each other, so that is potentially a really intimidating situation. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. And Charlotte, thank you for allowing John to share that. Yeah. Are you appreciative of the fact that John sees you the way he does now? Yeah, good. All right, so first impressions are really important, but we usually do change them once we end up being able to spend time with people. So that's really important. So person perception is actually the first term that we're going to look at. We're going to read through these first before you write them down, and then I'll give you time to write them down. Ivy, would you mind being the first one to read? The first dash point, please.
The different mental processes we use to form impressions of other people.
Yeah, okay, good. So that means that there are cognitive processes going on for us to form impressions of other people. And that's called person perception. Charlotte, would you mind reading the next two?
True.
Yeah, why not? Oh, as in
Lines or
these ones here.
both them?
Yep, both them would be great.
Can be formed directly from our own experience or indirectly from what we hear from others.
Yeah, good. Do you agree that that happens? Well, we form our own impressions, but sometimes we can hear other people talking about someone and we can actually believe what it is that they say. And then that builds up the perception, our perception of them, even though we haven't had that direct contact with them. And John, the last one.
Really inaccurate due to pre-existing biases.
Yeah, good. It can be inaccurate. So before again you get to writing it down, I'd just like to brainstorm some ideas that you might have about factors that can influence person perception. What might be some things that could influence Anthony?
Like their appearance.
Yes, good. So I'm just going to put the heading, person perception. Appearance. Yeah. Appearance is sort of often the very first thing that we go on, isn't it? It is like that first impression that we have. Excellent. Sienna?
Other people's perceptions of that person.
Yeah, good. Sarah?
Personality.
Yes, good. As in theirs or yours? Or both? Yeah, good. Yeah, again, that's very true, isn't it? They could be really loud, but when we get to know them, we actually find that, well, they're actually not really that loud in every situation. Sienna?
Their body language and how they carry themselves.
Ah, good. These are all things that give little clues. Sorry?
Attitudes.
Yes, definitely. Yes, we do listen to other people, don't we? And that also helps to form our impressions. Sam?
Rumours or lies spread about the person.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, well done. Okay, so that's a great start to that list. So what I'd like you to do is to take those down. So just a reminder to try and put them into your own words as much as possible. So person perception is the key psychological term, and the definitions are on the left, and then you can add those factors and any others that you might think of, and share any others that you think about. Actually, can anyone explain what we mean by pre-existing bias? Sienna?
A bias is kind of like a one-sided opinion that you have based on something, based on an experience that you've had with someone who fits that stereotype. Like, I don't like men with beards, and that's because of an experience I had with men with a beard.
Great example, that's right. So, and that's a really great example of person perception. So we therefore, it helps us to organise our world, doesn't it, if we make those quick judgments about people. Yeah. Good example, thank you. Now, once you've finished your notes, go back with your highlighter and highlight the key ideas. Now, I've had a go at highlighting some. You might pick some different words for highlighting, which is perfectly fine. So it's about selecting words and ideas that help you to understand the terms. Just going to slip to the next slide. There's just a few additional examples here which you could add to your list. So body language we've got. How we speak. Is that an example? What's an example of how we speak or how someone speaks that could create a first impression? Sarah?
Like slang.
Yeah, that's right. Their use of language. Someone who's very proper about language might definitely make a negative first impression about someone who uses slang or swears. Yeah, great. Accents, can they also? Yeah. Gender, we haven't got up there. Age, ethnicity. Dress sense. What's an example of dress sense, how that can create a first impression?
If you look at the people of Brauer, like you have those who are in full proper uniform and then the people who don't necessarily follow that.
Yes, that's right. So, and that's often what teachers do too, isn't it, about students who aren't wearing their uniform properly, which is why those people stand out. And culture, is another one that you could add. And disabilities. What's an example of how a disability could influence? Or maybe we could use the Kurt Fernley clip that we saw the other day. So what was something out of that clip that was an example of how a first impression could influence someone? Anthony?
So like the kids were wondering, just because he's in a wheelchair, like how he goes to like the toilet and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So unless we ask those questions, we, in a respectful way, we might be left wondering. Absolutely. Good. Okay. We're going to skip now to body language. We're just going to do this as a really quick little activity. So first of all, essentially, body language is a really powerful way of communicating messages. And if we're looking at someone else for a first impression, we will look at their body language. And then other people do that with us as well. So it's actually really important for us to be aware of what our body language actually is. So I'm going to get you all to have a go at doing this. So for this very first one, now I've got there in groups of 2 or 3. But I actually think what we might do is to get you all to get into these sorts of body language positions. So I want you to imagine that you are in a conversation with someone else and you're really into the conversation. So you're enjoying the conversation, you really like that person. So just put yourself in a position with facial expressions, shoulders, body, of what you would be doing if you were having that conversation with someone that you really liked. Okay, go. So you can do it in pairs if you wanted, or you can do it on your own. Now, when you're in that position, I'd like you to do like a freeze frame. So it might actually be easier, all right, if you're in pairs. So Emily, would you mind going and sitting up with Georgina? So I'll get you both to do it in a pair as well. So can you get yourself into that position and freeze? So you can walk around and look at us. Oh, yes, well, exactly. No, literally just a quick little snapshot of what you would be looking like if you were trying to give a positive impression. Okay, now, just looking around the room, try and stay where you are, except for moving your head. What sort of things do a lot of people have in common in terms of the body language? Sam?
Facing each other.
Yes, that's right. Facing each other, making eye contact, actually says to someone, I'm really interested in having a chat to you. Excellent. What else? Sienna?
Wide eyes.
Yeah, that's right. So that actually means you're really wanting to take in as much of them as possible. You like what you're looking at. Anthony?
Like smiling.
Yes, smiling. So positive body language is all about using your facial muscles to smile and look happy and look like you're enjoying it. There's nothing worse than talking to someone when they're not using positive facial expressions. That's very off-putting. Sienna?
Like, most people's bodies were also facing the other person's and like their body language, like leaning in.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a really strong message if we're leaning towards them. Okay, so this time I'd like you to do the same thing, except this time it's negative body language. What are you doing if you're not really interested, or you're not really wanting to be here chatting to the other person? Okay, so freeze frame, negative body language. All right. So what sort of things do you have in common now? What are some positions or things that most of you are doing? No eye contact, that's right. I sort of wasn't sure if you were doing the activity or not, but you were, that's right. You were just not wanting to look at each other. Excellent. Sienna?
Very frigid body language.
Yeah, in what way?
Like, kind of like to yourself, like you're very tense.
Yeah, and so based on what we said before about body position, what were so not making eye contact, but what about body position? Facing away, yeah, that's right. And that's what you were all doing. You were either looking in completely the opposite direction or looking ahead. So not really interacting with each other. Anthony?
Everybody was like distracted doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's right. So strong message that not really wanting to interact. Sam?
Like having your arms crossed, like showing that you're closed off and that you don't really want to be talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Great example. So thinking about the things that we've just talked about with person perception, that very first impression that somebody gets of us, if we want them to get a favourable opinion of us, which body language should we be choosing? Positive or negative? Positive, of course. Okay. And see, that also says that you're really enjoying psychology when you're leaning smiling, showing all that positive body language. I might skip this activity only because of the time. So we're going to now jump to stereotypes. Now, we've actually used this term a little bit over the last, today already. I think Sienna has mentioned the word stereotypes. But we're actually going to be applying our understanding of stereotypes quite a bit over the next week. So, if I just move it back, I'll move it to, we're going to do a brain break next. I've just taken it away so you can't read off the screen. What do we mean by a stereotype? What is a stereotype? Sam?
Like a commonly thought assumption about something or someone.
Yes, that's exactly right. So it's a commonly thought assumption. So, and the word that you used about thought is excellent because that is exactly what a stereotype is. So, Sienna?
It's commonly based on a group of people or an action rather than one individual.
Yeah, that's right. So it's an assumption that we make about a person because of the group that they belong to. Okay, so where do we get up to? Letitia, would you mind reading the first dash point, please?
Assumptions or beliefs we make about a particular person based on membership to a specific group.
Okay, good. So an assumption or a belief. So Sam said thought. Is that the same, or is a thought an assumption and a belief? Yeah, it is. According to the tri-component model that we reviewed at the very start of the lesson, which part of the tri-component would that belong to? Which one?
C.
The C, that's exactly right, which is the cognitive, which we've got down here. Charlotte, would you mind reading this one?
These assumptions do not take into account individual characteristics.
Yeah, good. So if we actually say all bikies are aggressive, we'd be making that statement or having that thought based on a general group of bikies. However, if we actually get to know an individual bikie or person with a bike, we are likely to realise that they're not all aggressive in any way whatsoever. In fact, most of them aren't. And maybe the next two, please, Sienna.
So they can be positive and or negative, and the cognitive component of the tri-component.
Yeah, good. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is to take down the key ideas from there and put into your own words, and then highlight the key ideas from those. And then you can copy down one or two of those plus one of your own, and then we'll share an additional one that you've added. Has anyone thought of an additional stereotype? John? Yeah, great example. And that's still a pretty common stereotype, isn't it? Another one. Anthony?
I put down like all teens are troublemakers.
Yes, great one. They are, aren't they? Excellent example. Do you think there are still people that do think that? Older people. Why might they think that? Because you guys are definitely not a bunch of troublemakers. So you're right, Anthony. It's a great example. Why might, say, older people, for example, think that, Sam?
The stereotype was stronger in their generation, so they still believe it, and in their generation, like more people believed it. So.
So their past experience, even of being there once upon a time and maybe getting into trouble themselves, yeah, can definitely lead to that stereotype, can't it? Sienna?
Dog people are friendlier than cat people.
Yes. Well, I'm a dog person, so I agree with that. So where do those sorts of stereotypes come from? Because do you agree that they're often fairly commonly thought ideas? So if they're commonly thought ideas, is there something to them, or is it, or not?
Past experience.
Yeah, past experiences, most definitely. And if we meet somebody who's a dog person who's really friendly, does that actually support the stereotype? Yeah, it does. So as soon as we have any interactions that support that stereotype, it can make it a stronger belief. Until we get to meet people who don't fit that stereotype, and then we can sort of start to break that down. All right, who's ready for a brain break? Yes, Charlotte's ready, so let's do a brain break. I think this is a Tuesday morning quiet, you're just waking up. So we're going to do a little a physical brain break. So if you can stand up and stand up behind your chairs. So if we do this first one today, it might put you to sleep, seeing it's still early in the day. So we're going to do a wave clapping pattern. So we're going to create like a Mexican wave, but this is a clapping wave. So when it's your turn to clap, you clap up into the air. So I'm going to start with one clap, and then Ivy will do 2 claps. And then Charlotte will do 1, and then John will do 2, and then Letitia 1. Does that make sense? So it's like try and do the Mexican wave as quickly as possible, but you alternate 1 and 2 claps. Okay, so ready, set, go. Go, Sam. Yeah, well done. Okay. This time we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to start off with, I give myself the easy one. Here we go. 1. You do get the harder version of it when you get around the other side. Okay, this time we're just all going to do 2 claps. Ready, set, go. Yay, well done. Okay, take a seat. You may, Charlotte. You may. Actually, are you able to hang out? Charlotte, are you even able to hang out for maybe 10 minutes? Is that a possibility? Yeah. And then we can go through. Okay, so stereotypes are a cognitive element of the way of our attitudes. So now, do you remember similarity when we looked at sensation and perception? So this is an example of similarity. What does that mean? Sienna.
You see things that are the same in your brain groups together.
Yeah, that's right. So we actually perceive these rows because they're all similar to each other. So we perceive them as rows as compared to perceiving them as columns. So our brains are actually hardwired to look for patterns and similarities. That helps us to understand our world. And it allows us to make quick judgments and decisions. So that really comes back to what Sam said earlier, in that it actually is really helpful for us to do that. However, it's then really important that we take the time to really understand people so that we can actually move past that as well. Okay, so it does fit with that concept of similarity. So prejudice. So our stereotypes actually inform our prejudices. So, Caitlin, would you mind reading the first dash point, please?
Prejudice means when we have a negative feeling towards someone because of their membership to a particular group.
Yeah, good. So using Anthony's example before, there are some people, if they think all teens are troublemakers, they may have negative feelings towards a teenager. Can't understand why, seeing you're all such amazing people. But that is true. And the next one, please, Sarah.
Prejudice is generally
Arise, yep.
from negative stereotypes.
Yeah, that's right. So it's usually negative stereotypes that lead to prejudices. And then the next one, please, Georgina.
Prejudices generally arise from negative stereotypes.
Sorry, we just had that one, the last one.
Can be considered the affective component of a stereotype.
Yeah, that's right. So if it's the affective component, what does that mean? What does affective mean, John? Yeah, that's right. How we feel. Only because you offered that at the very start of the lesson, so I knew that you knew it. All right, so an example is racism. What is racism? Anthony?
Is it like hate towards like a certain like group or like ethnicity of people?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you use that word hate, that's a feeling word, isn't it? So that's exactly right. So, and it is often a strong negative feeling based on someone's membership of a particular culture or having come from a particular country. So what are some other examples of prejudices then? Okay, I would love to hear from the few of you who've not said anything yet. Oh, but John, you have, but I would love to hear from you.
Isn't ageist one?
Yes, what does that mean?
When like people discriminate someone just based off their age.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I'm not old, but someone who's much older than me, what might you think of them? What might be some things that some people might think about people because they're old? They're boring. Okay, Letitia. True.
They get cranky all the time.
They get cranky, yes.
Have a bad memory.
A bad memory, yes. What was your name? Yeah, no. I know, you're Ivy. Oh, and I'm not old, that's right. Sam.
They can't do anything.
Yes, that's right. So, is that really true? Yes? Pardon? To a point. Does it depend on the individual? And does it depend on how old? Yeah, okay. But they are sort of general assumptions that we might actually have. So that's sort of all based on a feeling that we would have about people because they're old. Let's maybe identify another 2 examples. Ivy?
Sexism.
Absolutely it is. So what would that be?
That women can't do anything. And men can always have like a higher paying job or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Now, so would that be a stereotype about gender or a prejudice? Yeah, well, it is really. So the stereotype is that that's the thought behind it. And then the prejudice is the feeling, which is, that the feeling that maybe they're in the wrong job or they shouldn't be given a particular job because of their gender. Yeah, good. Sam?
Homophobia.
Yes. Which is?
When someone feels negative towards people that are LGBTQ.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a really great example of a lack of understanding, isn't it, of individuals. Okay, but a very real prejudice. All right. So in your notes, in your own words, highlight the key ideas, and then if you can add 2 or 3 other examples to racism. And then we're actually going to do a little activity with those types of prejudice very shortly. Lovely, neat notes, everybody. I'm a bit disappointed no one's done a mind map today, but neat notes anyway. Yes, Emily's always my mind map fan. Okay, we're then going to look at one other key term and a quick little application activity. And that will be the end of today's initial part of the lesson. Okay, so the next one is discrimination. And again, this is a term that we've used a couple of times today. So discrimination is then the acting upon our prejudice. We are up to Mahalia. Would you mind reading out the first dash point, please?
Discrimination is when we act upon this prejudice.
Awesome. Thank you. Kat, the next one.
For example, excluding people and treating them differently because of the group to which they belong.
Excellent. And Sam?
The behavioural component of the try component.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So the discrimination is the actual acting upon the prejudice. So stereotype leads to the prejudice, which leads to acting upon it. So on my notes up here, I'm putting an arrow from stereotypes to prejudice and from prejudice to discrimination. Can anyone think of an example of a discrimination? So how we might act in a way that shows our stereotypes and our prejudice. Sienna?
Not allowing someone to be employed because of their piercings, tattoos, or hair colour.
Yes, excellent example. So that's when an employer is acting upon their prejudice. Does it necessarily mean that that person is not the best person for the job? No. Do you think that still happens out there in workplaces?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It happens at school, I think, that we weren't allowed to have piercings.
Ah, yes. Yes. A lot of schools do still have strict rules about uniform policies. Yeah.
I think that's like the other ones because it's a lot of older people running schools. So
Yeah. And you know, that's a good point. Different ages do have different ideas about things. Yeah. Do you think that piercings and tattoos, for example, impact upon students' ability to learn? No? Okay. Why do you think schools might make those rules then? To make everyone
Look good, to make the school look good.
yeah, well, yeah, and all the same. So that's true, isn't it? Like schools do like students to all look the same and to look smart in their uniforms, but a lot of teenagers don't actually like looking the same as everybody else. Sam?
There's also a stereotype that people with lots of tattoos or piercings tend to be more misbehaved than that.
Yes.
A lot of schools still believe that.
So that's putting this into action, isn't it? Absolutely. A belief about beliefs and feelings about what people might be like if they do have piercings and tattoos. Yeah, excellent. All right, we are going to jump to one last little example to just to illustrate, to get you to apply your understanding. Now, what I would like you to do is to draw out a table, but just pick one example. So you will just need one line in your table. So you can pick out of those three, or you could pick another one because you've made a list of ones in your notes. So what I would like you to do for that example is to identify the stereotype and therefore a prejudice that might lead to, and then a discrimination that could lead to. And then this is our final activity. So putting your learning for today into practice. So these might be an example from your own experience, or you can create your own. You could make something up, is fine too. So I'll give you 2 minutes to finish this task, and then we'll share a couple. Yeah, that's a great one. If you need to go, you can go. just looking at the examples that you're writing down, well done. It does appear as though you definitely understand the difference between stereotypes, prejudice and discrimination. So over the next few lessons, well really over the next week, we're going to continue to look at different examples of prejudice and discrimination, particularly in action. We're also going to do a media analysis. We are going to watch a movie that looks at prejudice and discrimination, and then also highlights ways in which prejudice and discrimination can be broken down. So I think that's a very important part of learning about this topic, is just not just that it exists, but how it is that we as a society and even in our school community can actually do things to break those down. So we are a much more inclusive environment.
What movie is it?
Pardon?
What movie is it?
Ah, the movie is... it's a surprise. No, it's not a surprise. It's Remember the Titans. With good old Denzel Washington, who's one of my favourite actors. No, not today. We'll be watching that next week. Okay, we're winding up now. So would somebody be happy to share their examples of a stereotype, a prejudice and a discrimination? Sam?
I did racism. The stereotype was people of colour are less deserving, meaning the prejudice is I hate people of colour, which leads to the discrimination of I won't let people of colour play with my child.
Great example. Guys, you should be listening, of course. Thank you, Sam. Excellent example. Sienna, would you like to share yours?
So I did sexism. The stereotype was that women aren't as serious about sport as men. The prejudice was people not wanting to view women's sporting clubs, and the discrimination was the gender wage gap in sport payments.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent examples. Wonderful. Is there one more? Anyone else like to share theirs? Anyone dying to share their examples? No? Two's enough? Okay. So the very last thing that I would like you to do is to give me a fist of 5 as to how well you feel as though you can define and give an example or examples for stereotypes, prejudice and discrimination. So fist of 5. Awesome. So thank you for that. So most of you are 4s, so we're going to be doing a little bit more work which should consolidate your understanding of those. Does anyone have any questions based on what we've done today? No? Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much. You may pack up. That's the end of today's lesson.